Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much indeed for coming along. My name's Lee Webster, and I'm the Head of Policy and Communications for Womankind Worldwide. We're an international women's rights organisation. I'm very happy to welcome you here this afternoon. I don't need to repeat to you or tell you about some of the headlines in the media about immigration at the moment, or remind you how heated this issue becomes, especially at times like this, before elections, when all of the main parties seem to vie against each other about their tough stance on immigration. But this session's really not about repeating those, but getting behind them and thinking in particular about why women flee their countries, looking at some of the reasons for that and their experiences of arriving and being in the UK. So to do this, I'm joined by a great panel of speakers who are here to share their experiences and expertise with you. Here we have Nammi from the Iranian and Kurdish women's rights organisation. Then we have Ghada Rasheed from Women for Refugee Women. Here we have Ayah Omar from the Network of Eritrean Women. And then Sindy Czureja from the Roma support group. And Maria Patsalos, who's an immigration lawyer. So we're going to hear from each of them, and then there'll be time for you to ask questions and have a discussion. So we're going to start, please, with Diana.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am a founder and director of the Iranian and Kurdish women's rights organization. We're based in the UK, in London, but our work is mainly against honor-based violence, forced marriage, female genital mutilation, and any other form of violence against women and girls, especially with a focus to Middle East and North African and Afghan women who live in the UK. We do help women who are mainly either migrant or asylum seekers in the UK, and those who feel, just look at the situation at the moment in Middle East and in particular Iran, Iraq, Syria, and both the role of the state, which the violation of women's rights and human rights by government, by the state in those countries, and also the rise of fundamentalist groups like IS, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, and many more in the area. They make women to become deeply the first victim of the crime of the war, the first victim of conflict in the area, and many of them either will be raped by them or being forced into a marriage with IS people. And even some of them have been taken as a slave, and more than 3,000 of Yazidi girls, for example, in the area have been taken as a slave, which some of them managed to escape, but because they have been raped and taken away from the family. By doing so, the family or some members of the community will think that they brought shame and dishonor to the community. So they will be either forced to commit suicide, or they will be become a victim of honor-based violence. Some of those women manage to go to a safe place as a migrant or asylum seeker, which always we demanded that UN and all European countries take those women, give them a refuge and safety in the European countries if they want to come out of the country. And so far, even we try to ask the European Parliament's member or from different party in the UK to ask that question in the United Nations, what happened for those 3,000 girls? So they didn't even allow to ask the question. So this situation, which bearing in mind that UK themselves are a part of creating that situation and this stability in the area. So we need really to bring back the humanity and everything to our communities in the UK and around the world to help those who need our help in these days. So many of those women become a migrant or asylum seeker or refugees in countries like UK. And nowadays, you know that talking about migration is a very hot topic, especially for the political parties. And they are trying to really to be the hardest, especially to be the hardest to win the election against refugee. And what they think, I mean, what they want to blame refugee and migrants in the UK for the financial crisis that happened in the UK and around the world. This is not refugee and migrants' fault. Why they are not thinking about the greedy bankers and so many of people really that trying to create war and conflict in the other part? So refugees will run away when people have no way to live, when their life have been bombarded, and on the daily basis they are suffering, living in mountain during winter and summer. What do you think those people should do? They need a refuge. They need a safe place. And people like what is his name, Nigel Farage, he is using the issue of violence against women. He is using for his right wing and dirty mind. It's disgusting to using the pain of women for their right wing political aims. It is disgusting. We ask them to stop, to use pain for women as a part of the political issues for himself. This is not his agenda. We need to take it away from him. It's a racist agenda. Just to say that one of the things that as a woman, which we are always we are saying that women are multitasked. In our organization, as an organization and women, we are, again, multitask because we have to tackle racism, like Nigel Farage and his policy, and also to tackle the racism that it's saying, or the phobia of racism within the community. There are so many violence against women, many women organizations, even I am afraid within our community, they say that we have to keep silence about those problems. Otherwise, racists will use it, or it will be used for different policy against minority communities. Whereas always we say that tackling violence, it's all the time on our table. But we must not allow our women to be sacrificed for the fear of racism or being the community to be stigmatized. So we have to tackle both of them. And the main thing is for us that women, health and safety as a migrant, refugees, asylum seeker, their rights, the issue of no recourse to public fund, and many of the human rights, very basic human rights, to be really granted in this country for women, migration, and just to say, imagine if one day all the migrant people in the UK, both men and women from minority communities, just go on strike. What happened for this country? If one day we all don't pay our taxes, what happened for this country? So the problem is not migrant, the problem is something else. Migrants are contributing to the, and it is one of the beauty about UK to be multicultural, to have people from different communities, from different parts of the world. But what is dirty political issues is racism and the issue of cultural relativism, which we always tackle those problems. So I hope this will be an induction for giving the microphone to my colleague, Ghada. Thank you. Thank you.
Ghada, would you like to continue?
Hello, everyone. I'm very privileged to be a part of this great panel and to be part of Women and Immigration. I'm here to represent Women for Refugee Women. It's an organization that works to challenge the injustices that asylum-seeking women face through the asylum process, and as well as to campaign to end detention. So as part of my, let's say, work or my point of view, I'm here as as a refugee and as a researcher as well. So I just wanted to bring some picture for you to, as part of the report that we did for detention, and it's called Detained, and the second one is called I Am Human. So I was part of doing the interviews and going to the detention centers to meet the women and to get their stories out. I just wanted to talk about the process of how to actually get to the detention center and how to build this relationship with the women that are locked up in detention. It's kind of very hard and difficult. It's not that easy, but you need to build it up gradually, and you need to have this trust and solidarity with them. So as part of the Women for Refugee Women, we started this grassroots group, which we were all from a refugee background, and then we started to work on the research. And we found out that it's quite easier for the women to disclose and to tell their stories when they see someone probably went through the same experience or been there. So through this way, we kind of try to build this trust with them. And through this research to get the facts, to get the real stories, I found it is really hard and really difficult, because the women in detention, or the women being in the asylum process, they've been telling their stories many times, and they are exhausted and they are tired of telling the same stories over and over again. And so how to get them to tell it, and how to use this information, and how to, when you publish it outside, and how to keep this to protect this vulnerability of these women, and not to use it in a different way, and that won't be in a good for their good application. For the good asylum application. So and then as well as going there and trying to have this communication with them and building this trust, and then leaving them behind, and you know that they might build some expectation. They might think that you're going to help them to get out of the place. So it's kind of this relationship. It's very hard to as an individual as well. Probably I needed some help as well. I don't know, recovery, emotional recovery as well, because it's a prison. I mean, if you ever been there, or if you wanted to visit the women, you can just go and visit them. It's a prison. It's not an immigration removal center, as they call them. I'm just saying about how to find ways to get these stories out. Probably we tried from this grassroots group to find different ways, through probably poetry, or through different ways to make the women, not inside detention, but if they were outside, to tell their stories, and how to be creative on telling their stories, instead of keep saying it on the same way they are telling it to probably the Home Office. So we came up with this idea of spoken word, which is free poetry. You can write your own words. And the women, they were very, very happy to find this creativity of telling their own stories of how they left home and came here, and what they faced through different ways of, let's say, testimonies, and telling it over again, and how to make them feel like they are empowered, and this is their own way. This is their own way to raise their voice, and to probably campaign and be part of the campaign, and as well to do this policy change. instead of someone else is telling their own stories, like written or notes, their own voice, and they are empowered to do that. So this is kind of the way that we are trying to just change this behind the stories, behind this, like they call it case studies. They are not case studies, they are human beings. They've been through so much. They can't just be case studies. They just, like me and you and anyone else, they were unfortunate to have these difficulties in life, to have to flee home and from war or from any persecution. So just, so I'm here if anyone have any questions in this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. If it's okay, we'll keep the questions until everybody's spoken, and we'll move on to Ayah.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ayah Omar. I'm here today representing the Network of Eritrean Women. My parents came here from Eritrea in the 1990s during the liberation war against Ethiopia, which lasted 30 years and ended in 1991. Basically, I'm here to challenge the perception of asylum seekers and immigrants that come from Eritrea and other nations. My parents are working class people. They've worked ever since they've come here. I've graduated from university. Although I grew up in a household which was, I would say, apolitical, I didn't know much about Eritrea until I went to university and then conducted research for my dissertation regarding the role of women in the Eritrean liberation struggle. I found out that women accounted for up to 33% of the liberation struggle and fought alongside men equally. They had equal rights to men, equal rights to access to health, education. But after independence was granted in 91, things changed. Our president then became a dictator, and there's like endless military conscription in our country. So now, I'm sure in the media everybody's seen Eritreans who are stuck in Calais or who are just generally fleeing to, Italy or whichever country in Europe to try to escape this. Just through my research and speaking to people, I've seen that it's horrific what's happening to people. It's disgusting. The violence, it's just disgusting. I've had people traffickers have actually called our family. They've held one of our relatives ransom before, and you could hear that child being tortured in the background so that they can just try and take £10,000 from us. He actually died. After they gave them the money, they still killed him. We actually had another relative also that happened to, but luckily he was granted freedom. So it's just, I feel like what's happening to Eritreans is like they're forgotten refugee crisis that's going on all around the world. Like host communities like Sudan and Ethiopia have had Eritreans there. They've been there for more than 40 years, and nothing's been done about the situation. It's just been forgotten, and it's incredibly sad and horrible what's going on to them. I feel like now with the Network of Eritrean Women, they were established on the 6th of December. They're working to promote equal rights for women here, primarily here in the UK, and trying to deal with the new asylum seekers that are coming here to the UK, try to help them, give them better access to health and education and get them to start working and just deal with all the emotional trauma that they've gone through and just deal with their needs. So that's me. Yeah. So,
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now let's hear from Sindy.
Hello, my name is Sindy. I work with Roma Support Group, and they also have supported me for a large amount of years in many different ways. And what Roma Support Group, they are a charity organisation that supports the Roma community throughout the whole of the UK. So my family are originally from Poland. We arrived here because we were brutally abused, called names every day, gypsies. We didn't have house. We couldn't live in normal houses. They were giving us the worst houses in the area, and they would stick all the Roma community in one place and just leave them there, and they would have to build their own houses and make a living. And they couldn't get any jobs, so with all that, we moved to the UK, where we also had a lot of hardship and a lot of pain, because when we went to schools, we couldn't really say who we were. Because if you would say you were a gypsy or a Roma, they would bully you for that and they would beat you up. So we came to the country and experienced the same thing we experienced back at home. So I was about 3.5 years old when I came to the UK. So I don't remember much, but I remember the stories that my dad used to tell me, that when we came here, we were moving from one hostel to another hostel. There was a family of 7, we were, and we had to sleep on the floors, and my dad would have to take curtains off the window so we can cover us, so we can have a bit of warmth at night. And after hearing all these stories, I kind of realized that we have to do something about it. And the Roma support group have supported so many Roma people in the UK, and they're kind of making a living now. And what I do now, I do workshops with primary school kids, teaching them about the Roma culture, how we traveled from country to country, how all of our cultures link, because the Roma community, their language consists of every language in the world. Their songs are from everywhere in the world. They have similarities with everyone. So we teach these young people, young children, about the Roma community to kind of erase the kind of racial conflict that a lot of people have with the Gypsy community. And at the moment, we're trying to kind of, there's a new vacancy of it, like, that was available, which I applied for, which is to voice the Roma people, because Roma people have large trust issues with non-Roma people because of all the conflict that they had in the past. So it's a nice idea to kind of get a Roma person to voice the Roma community. So I've applied for it. Hopefully I get it. I have my interview next week. So wish me luck, guys. So I just really think the Roma support group have done so much for the Roma community, but they also support people from the Polish community. So there's a lot of Polish people from Poland that work at Roma support group and support the Roma community, and I think that's a beautiful thing, because there's a lot of people that can support us, and so we can kind of move forward and end the kind of racial conflict in the world. That's me.
Great, thank you, and good luck with your interview. Let's hear from Maria.
Hi, my name is Maria Patsalos. I'm an immigration and human rights lawyer. I work for Mishcon, which is a firm in Holborn. I have a broad spectrum of clients, anywhere from high net worth clients all the way down to clients, asylum clients who I work for free. I think the panel's been really interesting today. I think we've picked up a lot on the fact that migrants are made to be political scapegoats. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit, and then link into the very real stories that we've heard by talking to you about one of the cases that I'm working on at the moment. So I agree with what's already been said, that migration and migrants are made into a political scapegoat, especially around election time. I don't know if everyone's read in newspapers about the new Immigration Act that's coming out. I'll get a bit boring and legal now, but it's really dangerous and really not a good idea. It's an act that the coalition government have brought in, but I think it's spearheaded by the Conservatives, and it's really scary. It's introducing checks by the NHS and hospitals on migrants who need care, and also it's introducing checks by landlords. So before anyone at all can rent a property in the UK, going forward, they will need to prove that they have a right to be here. So if you can imagine landlords who have no experience of immigration at all, checking passports, checking visas, how difficult is that? So what are they going to do? They're going to look at someone's colour, their face, their name, and decide that I'm not going to risk it. So we're kind of breeding this kind of fear into the community, which is definitely not what we need at this time. And the same goes for doctors and hospitals, where their primary concern is to look after people, make sure that they're well, not checking visas. So that's one thing that I agree. The politics of immigration is really scary, especially around election time. As I said, we're going to hear this rhetoric, which is really scary, xenophobic, all because the political parties believe that us, the people, are worried about migration, and that leads into all the other social services, the NHS, housing, all the rest of it. The migrants are seen as the scapegoat for all of the problems, which is just not true and not fair. So bringing it back down to the personal level, because I think every person in the street will agree that when you bring in a person, a real story, people don't want to see that person kicked out or not allowed into the UK for these bigger potential issues. So one case that I've got on my desk at the moment, which is ridiculously sad, and I've been working on it for the last 2 years, is about this lady from Pakistan. She, very well educated, got a degree in Pakistan, then was involved in an arranged marriage. Her family and her husband's family put them together, and she moved to the UK. Her husband was a British-born Pakistani guy who lived in Bradford. And she moved into the family home, so with her in-laws, other brothers and sisters of her husband, so quite packed already. And she was expected to be basically their cleaner and chef, or cook rather. She basically cooked every meal for them, cleaned the house, pretty hard. She then fell pregnant. She had a horrific pregnancy, really, really bad. She was still expected to cook and clean for everyone during that. After she gave birth, thankfully, to a healthy baby boy, she was told by the doctor to not get pregnant again for another 3 or 4 years at least, to let her body get through that process of what she'd been through. Her husband absolutely refused, hid her contraception, her pills, and said that she was basically useless and compared her to a donkey if she wasn't there to give him children. So she fell pregnant again, had a second child, again, complications, but she was still expected to cook and clean. And the situation got worse and worse. She was then not allowed to take any decisions about her children's lives, their children's lives. So she wasn't allowed to talk about schools, take them to school, pick them up from school, go and do grocery shopping. She wasn't physically allowed to leave the house. It was really hard for her. And it just all she became so depressed, anxious. She went to the doctor, local GP. Her husband or one of the family members were always there with her, so she couldn't express what was going on back home. Back then, someone was eligible for permanent residency after 2 years. So her husband said that he'd applied for her permanent residency, and obviously she had no reason to not believe him. She also then said that she wanted to go back to see her family. She hadn't seen her parents in 3 or 4 years, and she was just missing home. So he said, can't go, your passport's in with the Home Office, you have to stay here. After a few weeks of arguing, he finally said, fine, your passport's back, let's go to Pakistan, I'll come with you, you can see your family. So they went as a family, the 4 of them. After a few days, he said, I've had an emergency back at work, I've got to go back. So she was kind of relieved at first. So he left. A couple of days later, she looked at her passport, the first time she'd seen it in years, and she'd seen that her previous visa had expired, and he hadn't got her permanent residency like he said he had. So she was basically stranded in Pakistan with no way to come back to the UK, with 2 young children. Both of those were British. Her children are British, by virtue of being born to a British father in the UK. But she was stuck, absolutely stuck. He then stopped picking up his phone to them, didn't send money, really, really bad. And her brother, who lives in the UK, Googled me, found me on the internet, called me up, said, is there anything you can do to help? So we put together a big application to the Home Office for discretionary leave to enter. There is no visa category for this woman to re-enter the UK after all the trauma that she's been through. There is what's called a domestic violence visa, but that can only be applied for within the UK. So if she had got advice in the UK before she'd left, then that would have been fine. I forgot to mention that she was the victim of domestic violence. He did hit her. So there was no option for her other than what's called discretionary leave. Discretionary leave is exactly what it says. It's up to the discretion of the Home Office as to whether they allow it or not. So we put together a very detailed application, but of course it was refused. We then went to the tribunal, the immigration tribunal, here in the UK. She's obviously not allowed to be there. So her brother was there, we were there representing her. The Home Office played lots of dirty tactics at that tribunal, which I won't go into, but effectively it was semi-refused, but then it was approved later, which was great. The judge did see sense, which is great. I do have to say that I think the immigration judges in the UK are very good. Once you get in front of them, they do generally make the right decision. So her visa was approved literally 2 weeks ago. We were delighted, so happy. We were getting such gushing emails, which is amazing, because I've never met the woman. I've worked with her for 2 years. She's never been to the UK. So we were very excited. We're finally going to meet her. And then I get a call from her brother saying, the kids' passports have expired, the British passports. So we need to go to the embassy in Pakistan to get them renewed. So they call up to make the appointment, and then they get told that they can't possibly have an appointment for these two children without the father's consent. So the client, distraught, says, okay, we've got the father's consent, sorry. So they book the appointment, and then they call us up and say, what do we do? So I wrote a lovely letter saying, this is what the situation on our legal letterhead. You know, we've been fighting for this client to get a visa for all these years, and she's now got a visa. She's separated. She was effectively dumped by her husband in Pakistan. And when she comes to the UK, we're going to help her with her divorce proceedings and maintenance proceedings for the children. That was taken in. They didn't want to know anything about it. They said, without the father's consent, we cannot renew these passports. So now we're stuck in this other limbo, bureaucracy from Pakistan. So, I mean, we're not giving up, obviously. We're going to keep fighting and try and fix this. But it's just a little example of a very real story of someone who's suffered and who doesn't deserve not to be in the UK. She's very educated. She wants to become a nurse, actually. So she wants to give back. Her children are British. And it's just these kind of catch-22 scenarios that I see constantly in my day-to-day life, which is just very, very difficult and very gut-wrenching. And then when you see the opposing, you know, the politics of it all, it just blows your mind. But anyway, that's me.
Thank you very much, Maria, and thank you everybody for sharing your experiences and expertise with us all. I'm sure some of you have questions. Would someone like to start? Yeah, sure, here. I think there's a mic. It's coming.
Hello? Oh, I'm sorry, I have two questions in there for, I'm so sorry. Maria. The first one is just sort of incidental. Is the British Embassy refusing to make the appointment?
Oh, it's difficult. What happens with immigration is that the British Embassy and the Home Office delegate their duties to a local kind of institution. They're normally called visa application centres or other kind of offices. So I haven't quite got to the bottom of what's going on in Pakistan yet, because it literally just happened last week. So I'm on the phone trying to deal with it and find out exactly where the blockage is and whether it's just someone who's basically thinking that they're more important than they are and putting kind of local judgment values onto a situation, or whether there's a real issue here. So I'm trying to work that out.
And then my other question was, with all the changes that have kind of been happening in the immigration system in the last, last 10 years,
Yeah.
obviously longer, but I know now they're proposing, is it a new points-based system, and they're reducing the categories, and how does that affect asylum seekers and the work that the panel would be doing?
Yeah, I'll go first. It's around election time, there was a lot of rhetoric. There already exists a points-based system. It's been around since the Labour government, so before this government. They always just kind of put spin on things. I think it was Nigel Farage who said it last week. He said that he was going to introduce a points-based system and try and kind of limit even more categories. Who knows what's going to happen? I really hope that, after the elections, people see some sense and don't kind of get too carried away with all of this rhetoric. Who knows what's going to happen, but I hope it's more positive.
Thank you. Another question here?
I've got a question for everyone, but it kind of starts with Maria. You said that you think that immigration judges, by the time, if they get to see the case, generally make the right decision. Why do you think that? And would the rest of the panel, from their experience, agree?
Well, for me personally, I'm really lucky. I've got a 100% success rate at appeal, and that's not down to me. It's down to the amazing barrister that we always use, called Duran Seddon, and he's fantastic. And I think one problem with immigration is that there isn't much funding in it. We've got legal aid has been kind of diminished more and more. And the problem is, if you don't take care to prepare a case properly, I think that was mentioned before with asylum applications, you mentioned that, people need guidance, because if it's a very emotional topic, a very emotional subject, and if people go in and tell their story, it's all over the place, it's rambling. I've been there during asylum interviews, and people need focus, people need to understand what things that the Home Office needs to hear in order to tick their boxes. And their story does fit into it, but they're too emotional and caught up in it. So, people need guidance, and that's where I come in and other people come in. And during the appeal process, we have prepped it and, organised all the documents and things like that, and where there are documents, because a lot of time when people leave their homes, they don't pick things up to say, oh, I've got to prove this to so-and-so in the UK. You know, it just doesn't happen like that. So my personal experience has been that immigration judges make the right decision. I know that's not the case across the board, but in relation to your question about why is that the case, the Home Office and the British embassies overseas have targets, and it's sad to think that people's lives are subject to targets, but they are. And so we have a high refusal rate at entry clearance, entry point to the UK. And then when it comes before the immigration judge, you know, common sense, you know, hopefully prevails. And then you do get a higher success rate at appeal. But lots of people don't have the money or the resources to get to appeal. So you get these people kind of caught in between. So that's my experience.
Great, and thanks. Do others on the panel have experience of immigration judges, and do they make the right decisions?
I think, let's say, from my personal first experience with asylum, there is a culture of denial and disbelief in the Home Office, especially when the caseworker, when you present your narrative, and you always, will be judged as you're telling the lies and you're not telling the truth. So this is the start point, and so you have to start from this point to prove that you're actually not telling the truth. So this is the difficulties until you reach the point that you tell your stories, and then you will get refused because you could lose so much of this trust until you will be able to tell your stories. And especially if you don't have even enough time to emotionally and mentally recover from your whole journey to be able to tell your story. And then I think as well, I think the immigration judges are more probably, let's say, human. More they look behind the papers, they look at the person, and I think with my case. Well, let's say I was probably, my asylum was based on my gender because I've been prosecuted as a woman, and there was no base on the asylum process, like to get refugee status on your gender because you're being prosecuted because of your gender. So the judge was trying to make this a different ways, or like trying to link it with the way that he can give me the asylum by being probably, because of your fear of your religion or your race or your nationality or a political view, then you can grant asylum. So they can't find different ways to find a way to approve your asylum, but of course the Home Office won't do that. I think the immigration judges will try to find different ways to grant you the status. So yeah, I do. Yeah, it's absolutely great.
Thank you. Can I just come to Diana and then?
Yeah, thank you. In our experience, I will echo this: the issue of the trust and this belief, this by Home Office and even by judges. Sometimes we experience that a lot. Home Office, their basic step is everyone are lying to them. So simply they reject every cases as possible. We had very successful cases with them, but then the majority of cases has ended up in appeal court of appeal. Many of our cases, they have been either they were not entitled for public fund, or it's called no recourse to public fund, which we had a campaign with many other organizations, and so far it has been successful in terms of having 3-month fully support for them, and claiming indefinite leave to remain for women on the basis of violence against women, the application you mentioned. But even this, the problem is that sometimes when it's been rejected, going to judges to make decision, their understanding about issues related to violence against women is not enough. And sometimes they are judging them on the basis of their own knowledge in terms of considering their culture, considering their religion, and everything that is not even based on the human rights. And sometimes you can see I have been in the court when a judge says that the father killed his daughter, and the judge says we need to consider his culture for the tariff. I mean, it was a judge that, it was a criminal court that happened in the UK. So imagine when a criminal judge still considering the culture, then for immigration judges not easy. Always we are really hope that it will be training about specific violence against women, which is happened mainly in minority community, not necessarily in the British white community, for example, the issues of honor killing or forced marriage or female genital mutilation. Our judges needs to be aware on that and giving asylum or protection to women who are fleeing on the base of violence against women.
Thank you very much. Ayah?
I just wanted to say something quickly. I don't really have that much experience in terms of judges, but from speaking to other women, I've realised that there's a lack of gender sensitivity in the asylum process and not understanding the other's culture. So, for instance, many people from the Middle East or from East Africa, it's out of respect that you don't look at somebody in their eyes when you're speaking to them, or to an elder or somebody of higher position, but automatically here you'd assume that the person's lying if they do that, or for instance for a woman to be able to tell you that she's been tortured or raped or whatever's happened to her, it's not easy for you to say that to a male officer or for somebody like that. And I feel like many people don't understand how difficult it is to come out of such a traumatic experience, whether you've been raped, tortured, walking through the desert, almost drowning at sea, and then to come to somebody and then just be told, can you tell me your story? It's not easy to be able to open up to somebody and express all those feelings. And then after you express all of that, you're having to deal with that again, after suppressing that for such a long time. And there isn't the help later on to be able to deal with that trauma, So I guess, yeah.
Thank you. Did you want to add anything, Sindy? No, don't worry. Did someone else have a question? Yeah, there's two over here. Can we go to the front one and the back?
Hello, I have a question for the lady representing Roma community. I work as an interpreter, Polish-English interpreter, and I often interpret for Roma community. And I find that social services that I deal with sometimes don't understand the culture. And often I've seen cases when children have been taken away from the family because the social services assess the family through their own culture. And also on the side of the Roma community, there is often lack of trust in the authorities. So they don't always want to cooperate with social services. And I have seen cases of children being taken away from the families. And I just wonder, because you said that you will be working with the schools, explaining cultural differences, whether you have any plans to work with the authorities.
I think at the moment they actually have a new project that's launched, and they work with a safeguarding team. So there's people from the Roma community go with someone that works in a safeguarding team, and they discuss the issue together. So there's actually Roma people now in the safeguarding team. So they go to, I know at the moment they're only in, they go to Derby. They work in Derby with the social services in Derby, and in, I think it's Devon, and they work there with the social services. But I think they want to launch a new project that works with social services and have people from the Roma community, because there is obviously that trust issue and that barrier. So I know that they're working on that.
So is that a pilot at the moment that might get
They've just
rolled
started
out?
it just, I don't know, maybe last year,
Okay.
end of last year that they started it. So they're working in Derby and in Devon, I think that's what it's called, Dover, that's it.
Okay, thank you. And there's another question behind. Great.
Yes, I wanted to ask the panel about the question of sexuality as well, because most people probably know that Aderonke Apata, who's a lesbian who was in court this week on Saturday, last Monday, was in court. She's a lesbian from Nigeria who's being told by the Home Office now that she's not a lesbian because she has children. I think that the main thing that has to happen at court is that the courts are actually packed out with people who reflect the diversity which the Home Office obviously lacks more than anything, because I think that's the best place of kicking them into place, really, more than anything, in terms of their lack of understanding, because we can't pretend that the Home Office is not political. It is political. It's political at all times, particularly during an election, more than anything. And I think it's really important to actually show in the court to the judge that the people there present reflect the diversity which they may not have. How ridiculous is it to say that somebody is not a lesbian because they have children, or because they may have been, they've come out in terms of being straight, and they've come out and become a lesbian, or have become gay, or because they don't know the address of a gay club. You know, I think it's really important to have that sort of support as well, not just the legal support, because we know that the boundaries change all the time. It isn't just a question of Adoronki not being able to claim asylum. It's in court that they're able to come out with the most ridiculous reasons to not grant somebody asylum in this country. And I think it's really important that we realise that the campaigns aren't just about the legal campaign, it's about what presence is there outside and inside the courtroom.
Great question, thank you. And as you say, we're seeing increasingly lesbians being deported to countries where we know they'll be persecuted. Should I start with Maria?
Yeah. I totally agree with you. Everything that went on in court last week was disgusting. It was really embarrassing, actually. But there is a culture of disbelief, which is something we've already raised, and that's across the spectrum to everyone, including the gay and lesbian community. And it is really difficult because one of the requirements to claim asylum is to prove that you're part of a certain social group, and being lesbian and gay is one of those, which is great. But how do you prove that you're lesbian and gay? And that's the problem. The Home Office historically had awful guidance on this, really, really crass, horrible, horrible questions that no one should be asked. And that's slowly changing. Stonewall have now kind of come out with new guidance, and they are training immigration officers in sensitive ways of asking questions, especially for people who come from communities where, like women, like you were saying before, and different cultures where they can't even express the words "I am gay." They don't even have that vocabulary. They just know that they're different. They know that they don't want to get married and have children in the normal trajectory in their culture and their community. So this is a long battle, and it's going to take a long time because even within our community and culture in the UK, we've only just allowed gay marriage, last year. So this is a very, very long process, but hopefully things are changing with the new guidance that has come out. So I'm hopeful for that, but at the moment, the way things stand, it's really, really wrong.
Would anyone else like to add?
Oh, that's true. I think you answered properly. This is the problem. In the first stage, they shouldn't be rejected on the basis of their sexuality, really. It's very difficult how people can, prove it. It's ridiculous, yeah, I think.
Unfortunately, people have tried to prove it with photographs and videos and horrible things that they should not be having to submit to the Home Office, which they absolutely should not. And we always tell people you definitely do not submit anything like that. It's completely demeaning and it is unnecessary. There should be systems in place that protect people from that scenario. So, yeah.
Right, thank you. I think we have time for one or two more questions. Can I come to this woman here? The mic's coming.
Hi. I just want to ask, obviously around election time, the topic is heightened in the media as well, and I wondered how that affects you guys, all of you, whether it's a more positive thing in that it helps your story, it gets your story out there because it's newsworthy at the moment, or how it affects also in court, like how does it make a difference either way?
I think for us, like for Women for Refugee Women, because we were having this big campaign about detention, and we've just launched the second report, which is I Am Human, which is will reveal all the kind of sexual harassment of the guards inside detention, and as well as watching women when they put them on suicide watch. And then recently this Channel 4 video, and which showed exactly what happening inside on the voices of, I mean, people really needed to listen to these voices to understand the reality is happening inside, everyone knowing probably if it's going to be a prison or detention or enforcement, it can't be violation inside. So I think this kind of media can make it more empowered, like the campaign, and people are starting come back to the petition. I could say like the raise of petition for us will be really higher because of the Channel 4 video, and then we were being acknowledged to be asked to come, and the women that we told their stories to come and say to tell their stories again. So of course the media is absolutely a vital part of any campaign or any policy change.
It's interesting that you say from an organisational perspective you've found some opportunities to come back and address the
because it's when
narrative.
It's static, you tried, I think we campaigned with different organizations. We campaigned with women organizations. We did the petition, we did the protest, like the action outside the Home Office, and it's reached to the point it stopped. And then this now is coming back to life. So we have to use different opportunities, even if we don't believe. We do believe the research that we did is more accurate than the. Yeah. But if you need any opportunities to raise these voices back again, to say there are actually happening violations inside detention and need to be, shut down, then we have to do that. Yeah.
And Diana, you work with migrant women all the time. How does it feel then when you see those headlines, and how does it impact on your work?
Oh, it's devastating. It's devastating, absolutely. Every day, media have a huge, powerful role to play. They can really change the mindset of the whole society and community, and either by defending something or, rejecting something. And during this period, especially from the past few years, maybe 10 years, the atmosphere has been very dangerous and created a hatred atmosphere against minority community, against refugee, and people when openly tell you that go home, go to your country. I faced in the meeting conferences when people from Home Office, they come to me and say, go back to your country. We are paying taxes to migrants. And I was shocked. I mean, this kind of attitude is unacceptable. It's unacceptable, but this kind of media coverage and hatred, giving permission, creating opportunity for this very racist attitude to increase within the community and an atmosphere against migrants everywhere. Sometimes even you feel that, you are not safe because you are not a white British. And this is very unfair, very scary. And especially when you think about really the role of migrants, I mean, they are trying to blame migrants for their political corruptions, for the financial problem and crisis. It's not our fault. I mean, migrants are paying taxes. As far as I know, though, many of us who are working, definitely we are paying taxes. And those people who come from other countries to work here, they are cheaper labor because the capitalism, they need cheaper labor in the UK. They allow them to come to the UK. Now they don't want them and created an atmosphere that is very, very dangerous. And it is very dangerous. I mean, really even talking about human rights is far, far away from human rights and equality. It is very bad.
Thank you. I was going to ask Sindy, obviously negative media coverage is something that affects Roma and traveller communities significantly. Did you have a comment on that?
Well, what I do know is that there's a lot of obviously headlines that, most of it is just like the evictions, that they might get evicted or they might get sent back to their countries that they came from. And there is that constant fear, even though, like, for example, Poland is in the EU now and we can legally stay in England, they still have that fear. There's always rumours going around that they're going to get deported, but I think it's that constant fear that they live in. That's what I can comment on at the moment.
Ayah, do you have?
I feel personally that for Eritreans, they're a forgotten refugee problem. So even if it is negative attention, the fact that different media organisations have been able to go to Calais and different areas in Europe and actually interview these Eritreans and perhaps understand more about what the situation is in Eritrea, because it's a state which no journalists are allowed in. They say it's like the North Korea of Africa. So it's I think although it's something, the perception of asylum seekers and immigrants is negative, and I think people have such a ignorant view of them and they don't understand, but I feel like the fact that it has allowed other news organisations and other people to go to Eritreans and see what sort of state they're coming from, why more than 4,000 people are leaving every month and travelling the deserts and travelling in such horrendous conditions just to reach Europe, like why they're risking their lives. So I feel like it has brought some positivity from it. Yeah.
And Maria, does this have an impact in the courtroom?
The press.
Yeah.
The press has an impact on everyone, unfortunately, and fortunately in other circumstances. I think the press in relation to immigration can be very, very dangerous because everyone reads what's in the newspapers, and I think what's already been touched upon, the language that is used, it can be very dangerous. Asylum seeker does not mean someone who's here claiming benefits. That means that they are seeking asylum from some awful thing that they have experienced, but it gets all caught up. The language is confused, and unfortunately the Daily Mail and the Sun really kind of highlight this issue. You read these headlines and I personally laugh out loud because it doesn't make any sense, but you know, the people on the street don't understand the legalities of it all, and you know, they can be easily led, especially with everything that's going on, anti-European sentiment as well. So I think it can be dangerous in relation to this particular topic, but obviously great if organisations can jump on the back of it and turn it into an opportunity.
Great, thank you. I think that actually brings us to the end of our time, but thank you to you all for coming and for your questions, and thank you very much to all the panel.